Welcome to FedScoop TV. I'm Wyatt Cash, and we're here at the 2017 Red Hat Government Symposium. And I'm here today with Jay Olsen. Jay is the Senior Area Director for Digital Platforms at CRSA. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Wyatt. Happy to be here.
Terrific. I'd like to start first with about open source and give us a feeling for how does open source really fit into the broader IT modernization effort going on in government?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we think of open source around a few different key elements, right, and potential benefits. The first being cost. Most of our customers go into open source with the expectation that there will be some lifecycle cost reduction. You'll want to do a thorough analysis of alternatives based on total cost of ownership. That may not be a given, so something to think about, but there's a general expectation for cost savings. Second area is flexibility, the ability to have access to the source code, which you may or may not have with a COTS-based solution. Flexibility around technical support, for example, and different options as opposed to just one proprietary vendor, having multiple options for technical support. So that idea of having true flexibility. The third piece that we would probably focus is around really innovation and the use of open source as an accelerant. So the idea that these are the best of breed solutions, we've had large teams of innovative collaborative developers have worked on these solutions, matured them and evolved them over time. And the ability to leverage them for things like DevSecOps automation is really critical.
So that's sounding like some good benefits. As agencies look to adopt emerging and innovative technologies, tell us a little more about how open source can help.
Absolutely. So, we think of it in a few different ways, right? So if you think of the modern building blocks of software development today are often open source based. So things like Apache Ant for build, Git, Subversion for source code management. These are typically foundational elements of a customer or development shop's application lifecycle management toolset. And or their DevOps toolset as well. So really enabling automation. And you may end up having a mix of open source elements of that tool chain as well as proprietary solutions. We then extend that maybe to development frameworks, things like Hibernate, jQuery, Node.js, all of these different frameworks that allow software developers to improve their velocity and really based around automation. Open source test automation frameworks are a good example of that today. And then that extends really into the idea that open source used to be, many of our customers went into it with the idea, as we said earlier, about cost reduction.
Right.
But as these solutions have matured over time, they've really shifted from good enough to really best in breed. So if you look at solutions like for big data, Hadoop, for example, for containers, Docker, maybe Kubernetes for container orchestration. These are generally looked at as industry best practice solutions at this point.
You mentioned container technology. Tell us a little bit more about how you see container technology driving innovation in agencies.
Absolutely right. So a few different thoughts there. So really a little bit of backdrop on containers, right? It's really the idea that for a given application, we're going to package all of the required elements, the runtime, the processes, the associated libraries, all the components that application needs to run, produce a container image. And the idea there is it's easily deployable to any platform at that point, as opposed to a traditional method where you had a very specific development environment. We had a team often of operations folks and system admins who had to maintain that. It really drives efficiency there. We see a few different outcomes from that, right? The idea for the developers, it gives them control and speed, which is what they're looking for. So the ability to quickly add new features and functionality without so much focus on all of that operational deployment and configuration considerations. A second point might be facilitating migration to the cloud.
Okay.
Right. So with containers, it's very easy once an image is established to port that to different platforms.
Right.
So that might be an on-prem set of bare metal servers or VMs. It could be AWS GovCloud, for example, or it could be my fellow developer's Mac. Really ease of deployment there, facilitating movement to the cloud. If that's the direction our customers want to go.
Great. Lastly, cybersecurity is the preeminent IT concern in federal government. How can industry help agencies use open source to promote security?
Great question. That's a critical thing around open source, right? So we think of a few different steps and considerations for our customers around that. The first would be to establish a policy, as simple as that sounds, in OSS consumption and how do our developers contribute back to the community. Have a concise, what we call developer-friendly policy for that. We also recommend not to develop that OSS policy in isolation, but have it be part of an enterprise or an agency's broader software asset management strategy. If done in isolation, the chance for success may be lower, but if it's part of that enterprise software asset management strategy, that's effective. We also encourage maybe the use of certain control points in the process, so maybe the project manager, we often will have that person assigned to identify any open source components and dependencies. And track them that way. From a tooling perspective, a couple thoughts. You want to trust your development teams with open source. That's a key part of it, right? But you also want to verify. And so modern tools, things like Black Duck or White Source as two examples, help with proactive system level scanning to identify potential vulnerabilities. And then a third thing is establish a repository that's managed for these open source components. It could be as simple as a file share or a network drive that has certain access controls, or more modern solutions around things like Sonatype Nexus or JFrog Artifactory, which are true digital open source asset repositories that enable the management and automation of ensuring that certain components are secure, that they are the right version, and if not, they highlight that and expose any known vulnerabilities. So a few different alternatives there.
Well, Jay, those are some great recommendations. So thank you so much for stopping by, sharing some of those with us. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely, Wyatt. Thanks you.
Great. Look for more of our coverage on open source and innovative technologies at fedscoop.com. I'm Wyatt Cash. Thanks for watching.